back to the list. Our topic today is Best Movie Soundtrack. We've already heard our panelists' third and second choices, and since we're operating in descending order, that means it's time to get to their number one picks. John, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, this is an emotional as much as an intellectual choice, because I remember very well when the whole country stopped to watch the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. I went to see the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. Didn't hear them, but saw them. I mean, the Beatles are big in my life. And in terms of a soundtrack, only twice have I signed up at a record store to reserve a record. And this was Hard Day's Night.
That had some great songs on it. Wasn't a Hard Day's Night on that album?
Yes.
So what was the other album you reserved? We have to know. I mean, you just left that waiting for the shoe to drop. You reserved Hard Day's Night in the record store. What is it?
The White Album.
The White Album, of course.
I remember, this is going to stop, but I remember I lived in Westwood in L.A. I had to go to Encino, which was like the Valley, which was really far.
Still is.
to go to a record store on like Ventura Boulevard, and there was like a line 6 blocks long at like 9 in the morning, waiting for the place to open to buy the White Album.
Wow.
You know, sad story, actually.
Marcia, what's your number one pick?
Well, I was an impressionable girl in high school when this movie came out, and there's a scene in it where it's dancing and music, and they start off very nicely singing about being on a plane and being stewardess and take off with us, and then before you know it, the lights go down, the tops come off, they're dancing naked on scaffolding, and I fell in love with this movie, and it is called All That Jazz with Roy Scheider. Awesome film.
Very eclectic choices
yes,
today. That's
I'm
great.
an eclectic human.
Actually, in All That Jazz, the use of whose version of On Broadway? It's George Benson's.
Yeah.
The opening of the. I was asked to direct at one long ago in my youth a version of a movie version of Chorus Line, which is an incredible, great show.
Another favorite.
So I go to see. I think, well, this is great. This is like a real opportunity. And then All That Jazz, Bob Fosse's movie, came out, and the opening of All That Jazz is an audition to Benson's, and it's like Chorus Line in 3 minutes better than I could ever do it.
Amazing.
It's a brilliant film.
So good.
Amy, what's your number one?
Okay, this movie was very important to me in my life. When it came out, I decided I wanted to be a director, so I started doing productions all over my neighborhood. It has a great soundtrack, a great story by Shakespeare, but, you know, also Leonard Bernstein and other people. West Side Story. I just had to do.
By the way, kids, you would know this as the soundtrack to the Gap commercials. Thank you very much.
You're right. You know, West Side Story has in common with My Fair Lady Marnie Nixon, who does the singing for Natalie Wood in West Side Story and does the singing for Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady, and Irene Dunn in The King and I. Marnie Nixon had this great career as The Voice. Too, yeah. Oh, yeah, a lot of things. Yeah. I'm sorry, that's, you know, they're all, look at this.
Good to know.
Jimmy, what you got?
Okay, well, my top one has to be something that kind of, we talked about in the beginning, score and songs, and I think it's always clever if you can somehow do them both and somehow combine orchestral arrangement with wah-wah guitars and come out with a hit record. If you want to talk about timelessness, is of course when the theme to a movie is so good that number one, you can recognize it from the first note. If somebody, you know, if somebody goes quack, quack, everybody, you know what it is. Also, if when they remake the movie, they can't improve upon it, so they just re-record it again. It's the same thing.
Oh, no.
Exactly right. Except this was a bigger hit record, see? And that's another component to it, of course, in these days of marketing. So I would have to give my number one to Shaft.
You just you just made me think of it, but you look at the way they're selling the new Shaft. They took Sam Jackson and made him look like Isaac Hayes.
Yeah, they did
Yeah.
the old theme. And the most impressive part about the movie was I mean, the soundtrack was by far better than the movie was. But that initial scene where, you know, Richard Roundtree sort of just walks through the hood as this music is playing, to me is directly, if you put it with Saturday Night Fever, with the first thing. I mean, it's almost the same type of deal, but the whole attitude of the movie comes through just in the one song. And it was, you know, Academy Award nominated and the whole deal, so.
They say the soundtrack is a bad mother.
Shut your mouth.
I'm talking about the Shaft soundtrack. Okay, it's elimination time. We need to take 4 off the list because 12 is just too many and 8 is just right. Take a look up there. Right up there, yeah. 4 of those just suck, don't they? John, what's one of them?
This is easy because it was a mediocre movie, and there's a better version in Clockwork Orange, Immortal Beloved.
Oh, Marcia.
Oh, you can't get any better than Beethoven.
That's right. No, Beethoven's fine. I'm talking about the
When's the last time he was on
Just read the
TRL?
movie.
Come on.
What? Well, that makes me want to just nix My Fair Lady.
Well, oh my.
I'm okay with that because My Fair Lady doesn't care.
All right.
Okay, My Fair Lady.
All right, there you go. My Fair Lady is
I'll
off
have
my
to get
list.
Superfly.
Amy, what's got to go?
Pretty in Pink.
Okay. Marcia, not your day.
Hey.
What?
So sad.
Molly Ringwald.
Oh my goodness, Pretty in Pink off the list. What was the other one you had?
Lady in Red? I don't know.
Okay, narrowing them down. Jimmy, what is it? Got to go.
I'm going to take all that jazz off because I haven't seen it.
Oh, Marcia!
I haven't
Not
seen
Marcia's
it.
day.
That's an acceptable reason.
All
You're
that jazz
missing
is
a
off the
great
list.
movie. That's all I have.
Hey, all of mine
Good.
are still on. Do I win something?
Do I get a movie prize?
Okay, during the commercial break, our studio audience will be physically restrained and forced to cast their votes. And when we come back, we will reveal the definitive top 3 best movie soundtracks of all time. Don't go away!